to the channel, folks, and to the first of our series of American Bulge videos. We're going to be painting the infantry from the American Spearhead box in this video, and in subsequent videos I'm going to show you the vehicles and then also use the box set as you get it as a 100-point force in a game. But we're starting here with the paras, and we're using the dark green colour here, not the sort of light tan colour that you'd maybe use I think earlier in the war. So we're using a US dark green as our start colour, our main colour rather, over a base of German Camo black brown in our usual style. So we're applying the US dark green, and as you can probably see there, little brush strokes where I'm picking out individual areas of the uniform, picking out pockets, picking out folds on the arms, on the legs, so that we're leaving shade that is the German Camo black brown in the deeper areas. It's almost like on the arms, for instance, where I'm painting a series of lines and then joining those lines up together along the flat of the arm, so to speak. So those lines are creating the high points, or picking out the high points, leaving the shade, and then on the flat areas joining everything up together with a nice simple stroke. Now this is quite a dark green, but we are going to brighten it up significantly, guys, once we put the highlight on and paint the other areas. For the US dark green, my highlight is going to be green grey, which is very much my go-to highlight colour for most greens. It's a highlight colour that's not too saturated, but as you can hopefully see here, it really helps the detail of the uniform pop. So I'm applying these highlights as close as possible to the shade colour. That creates the greatest contrast and therefore the greatest depth. And I will put these highlights on pockets and seams and collars and such likes, but also where I'm putting it on like an arm or a leg, I am going to apply it directly above the shade as much as possible, because that's where the light will be striking the uniform when it's coming down from on top. That's the uniforms done now, so we're moving on to the areas that are going to be black or metallic. I've given the boots and the metallic areas of the weapon a coat of black, and then the main colour is German grey. Now I'm going to leave the boots, that's it, that's all we need, because they're supposed to be black, but I'm going to give the metallic areas just a little bit of a highlight with London grey, and it just helps that catch the eye without having to use metallic colours. Now we can move on to the webbing and the pouches. Now you could use green grey here as a colour. I mean, that's a very historically accurate option, but it's going to pretty much disappear into the background of the uniform, and we don't want that. We want to be able to clearly see all these little bits of equipment, because that's going to really help define the shape, bring everything into focus on the figure. So I'm using old wood. This is Panzer Aces old wood, and I'm going to use that colour for all the various little bits of fabric that's not on the uniform. So that'll be all kind of pouches, ammo pouches and various things. That way we're going to save us a lot of time and having to switch between lots of little different bits of colour. So remember, folks, in this case, just as you're going to be doing actually in all the painting here, you need to give it two coats, especially when using a lighter colour over this dark German Camo base colour, the shade colour, and then just leave little bits of that, very small amounts of that German Camo black brown shade to help define the shape around and internally on the larger areas that we're painting here. The highlight colour for the pouches and the webbing is Iraqi sand. It's quite a bright colour, so you don't want to overdo it. You just want to be going around and putting little highlight lines in the most important places, like on the top of the small pouches, on the top of any straps on the edges of larger areas such as the backpack and the little straps within the backpack, and these are just going to catch the eye, give it a bit of shape, but be careful not to overdo it. For the rifle stock, as we're going to be applying 2 coats of colour anyway, it's worthwhile here just getting a little bit of extra depth, because we're not going to apply a final highlight. So we're going to start with flat earth, just follow the shape of the rifle, folks, leave a tiny wee bits of dark brown to help define the shape, and then we're going to move on to Panzeracey's New Wood for the final colour, leaving a little bit of the flat earth for a bit of grain or shade. Now for the mortars, bazookas, helmets and such likes, I have replaced the German Camo Black Brown with a deep shade colour of US Olive Drab. Now on the mortar and the bazooka, I've used Brown Violet to start layering it up, just starting to build up the shape on that piece of equipment as I would on a uniform, leaving the US Olive Drab as the deep shade colour. Don't forget the mortar shells and the bazooka rounds here, guys. We'll just use the same colour once again to keep things nice and simple and keep us moving forward nice and quick. And to highlight that, it's good old green grey again. Green grey is our friend for anything which is green. And you can see I'm just picking out the various elements, various components of the mortar. There's quite a little bit of detail on this small area, so it just takes a bit of time, but if you do that, then it's going to be really nice and clear and obvious what all these parts are when it's on the tabletop, and that's what we're after here, folks. And don't forget the hand grenades, folks. There's little bits of detail all over these figures you need to pick up on, and of course the bazooka. Now notice once again for the highlight, guys, because it's usually quite a bright and contrasting colour, it's just small strokes, small amounts of paint. We don't want to go over the top here. And with something like a bazooka, which is just round, we want to pick out the main features and then put just a few little highlights across the top just to catch the eye. Another little bit of detail is a bit of bandage or gauze, I think, on the webbing. So I'm going to use green grey and a highlight of deck tan, which will just make it pop out against that green uniform. For the rifle strap, I want to use a light fabric kind of colour that looks different from the webbing. So I'm using German Camo Beige World War II here, and then I'm going to give it a highlight using deck tan, which is a very nice bright highlight. So once again, don't use too much of it, just catch the edge to give it some shape. For the entrenching tool and the helmet strap, I'm going to use German Camo Medium Brown. That's going to be the base colour for sort of the wood and the leather elements, and by using a different highlight colour we get very different final looks. US Field Drab for the wood and orange brown for the leather. We're going to keep using that US Field Drab to work on the helmets. So these helmets have got a US Olive Drab undercoat as like a shade, and we need to pick out all these strips of camo that have been woven into the netting. So there's quite a lot of detail you could paint in here, but we're going to keep it nice and simple. So we're going to use the US Field Drab as the base colour for these strips. Then a highlight colour of green ochre, just picking out the tops, the high points of all those little camo strips, nothing more than that. For the skin, I'm using my normal combination here, which is saddle brown, bronze flesh tone and flat flesh for the final highlight. I'm just blocking in the saddle brown. We don't have to worry about any internal shade here in terms of the German Camo Black Brown. This is going to become our deep shade colour, and then just follow the shape of the face. You know, you've got brows, nose, lips, chin, cheekbone. Basically leave the shade in where it would be, where you would expect it to be in a nice simple basic face. Same goes with the fingers, not doing anything too complex here, just painting little lines. And then the final highlight can be on the knuckles, on the brows, the top of the brows and nose, under the eyes, guys, so that's the top of the cheeks, and on the chin and on the maybe a tiny little bit on the lips. Once again, this is a very bright highlight, so keep it under control and you've got a finished figure, folks. So here we have a selection of the completed bases. I've made enough to fill all the options that you can use in a platoon. For instance, there's a 60mm mortar, 2 light machine guns, 2 bazookas, 6 ordinary bases and the command base. I've given these a bit of a wintry looking theme. They're not snow covered. You know, that's a big step to take to make snow covered bases. So these are just sort of wintry, sort of weathered grass and bare earth. Now, I've made the surface of the bases using the Vallejo earth effects that you'll probably see me using quite a few times, and you can see a bit more detail in the basing guide that I've got on the playlist. And what I did there is, once that had dried, which is overnight, it's an acrylic paste, I did a very careful wash of light coloured earthy pigments, and that gives a bit of definition. You can see the definition in all the little bumps and lumps that you've got in the surface there, and it means you don't have to do dry brushing and such like, so it gives you a nice flat surface. And there is a few little bits of stone lying about as well. So there you go, folks. The American Paras in their dark green style uniform. As you can see, they still pop quite nicely against the bases. You know, if you keep the bases a colour which is going to contrast with the painted uniforms, you should get a finished look. So there you go. Hopefully that's of use to you. If you have any questions, please stick them in the comments below. And I'd like to say thanks again for watching, folks. Thanks again to the subscribers, and if you'd like to subscribe, please do so. It'll help me get this kind of video out to more people who enjoy the game and the painting. And hit the bell button, guys, and I will definitely see you on the next one, which should be American armour.